Greetings from Tokyo, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and I hope you are all doing very well today. I'd like to take this opportunity, if I may, to address a couple of, well, not a couple, but just one general comment / question that I've received from a number of people over the past several months. And it's usually been sometimes on comments to videos that I've uploaded over the course of this YouTube channel and the like. And I'm very grateful for the interest that some people seem to have with respect to this particular aspect of my own personal viewing habits. The question that I received from a number of people, and it's essentially the same question, so I'll synthesize it into my own words, is how many films do I watch in a day? How many films do I watch in a week, etc.? In other words, do I watch a film a day, or do I watch more than one film a day? That sort of thing. And the answer is actually quite simple, but depending on one's viewpoint, I suppose. As of now, this point in time in my life, I don't watch a film a day. I unfortunately don't have as much time as I used to devote to watching cinema. So now I don't keep a strict count of things, but I perhaps watch maybe 3 or 4 films a week, perhaps. Maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less, depending on the specific nature of that particular week, something like that. But that definitely doesn't come out to a film a day. And let me just give you a little bit more explanation as to my own personal situation, which is that when I was younger, in my teens and 20s, I was a student, or I was in college, and in particular when I was in college, I had a very eager appetite to want to essentially watch and absorb and devour as many of the films that I could get my hand on. And this was a very key, or one of the key moments in my cinema-loving life, I suppose, in that when I was in college, this was the first time for me that I was really exposed to these great films, and that I had otherwise not had access to prior to my entering college. So there was a really good film library there at the time. But around the time that I entered college, this was around the time that DVD was beginning to grow in the market, but it didn't really take off until much later. It was around this time that Criterion started to release its own DVDs, but it was at the cusp, and so there was a time that I didn't. Or there was a time that I was in school and I didn't necessarily know of Criterion DVDs yet because they hadn't been released, and so at the time Laserdiscs were still pretty much the norm in terms of high quality home media entertainment with commentaries for the higher scale up Laserdiscs and the like, including the Criterion Laserdiscs, of course. So at the time, Laserdiscs were such a huge deal for me, and they were a real technical marvel. And in many ways now they still are. But this is the time that I was studying in college or entering college. So it was Laserdiscs and VHS and some sometimes 16 millimeter. I learned how to use a 16 millimeter projector, and so I was able to project some films that were at the time only available on 16 millimeter, and so this was a really big deal for me. At the time, it's not such an exclusive item now, but at the time, the Stanley Kubrick film Fear and Desire. Perhaps you know this. This is a film that I think is now very readily available on Blu-ray. You can get it, I think, on Amazon fairly easily, I think, and at a pretty good price. Well, at the time, it was never available commercially, never. And so I was very fortunate to have been able to go to a place where the film archive actually had a 16 millimeter copy of Fear and Desire, and I was actually allowed to project it and to watch it and to screen it. And so I screened my own little private screening of Fear and Desire on 16 millimeter. Granted, the picture quality is obviously not what it now is in terms of the Blu-ray releases and such, but at the time this was a very big deal for me anyway, because it was so difficult, or it wasn't difficult, it was impossible to watch. So to have been able to watch something like that was really exciting. So this is sort of setting the stage for where where my film appetite was at the time when I was in my late teens, early 20s. And I still don't know much about cinema, but back then I had seen way less films than I have seen now in my, I'm now 40. So I think at the time when I was young, I was really yearning to try to watch as many things as possible, both new and old, both strongly classic and maybe mainstream or maybe genre or subgenre films, anything I could get my hands on. And so my appetite was such that I was trying to watch at least one film a day, if not more. And so I can definitely sympathize, and I totally understand whenever I hear from a viewer or friend through YouTube or otherwise who is maybe in his or her 20s or maybe teens or 20s and is maybe on his or her own cinema journey that has just begun. You've just embarked on this journey. So at this point, I can definitely understand if someone feels the urge to want to watch as many films as possible. And if that means packing in more than one film in one day and repeating that schedule, that daily schedule over the course of many days, then bravo to you. Kudos to you, my friends, for having such a great film schedule and strong fortitude for this. That's what I tried to do when I was young. But as I grew older, to where I am now, my time schedule is unfortunately such that, again, I don't have time, unfortunately, to devote to cinema as I once did. My time has to go in other places. So as a result, my viewing time has gone down quite considerably, to the point where I have to make do with watching, as I say, maybe 3 or 4 films a week, depending on the particular week. Okay, so there is the time commitment that I have. The other thing, too, that I seem to have, that I have in my own viewing habits is I tend to not be able to recall with great clarity films that I see, let's say, together in one day. In other words, the phenomenon was such that, and I didn't really realize it, I didn't fully appreciate this when I was young, but I appreciate it more now. The fact that when I watch more than one film in a day, the phenomenon in my head occurs that I tend to not be able to remember the films clearly enough in my own head. I tend to jumble scenes up, or I tend to confuse certain aspects of one film, maybe confuse it with another, and that sort of thing. It's hard for me to keep things clear and well organized in my brain. So that is one of the reasons, actually, that I don't watch more than one film a day, or at least I generally don't do that. And so so there are two general reasons. One is a practical reason due to my own time constraints, and also one is more of a personal reason, let me put it that way, in the sense that for me, it's easier for me to recall and to keep clear in my mind the details of a particular film if that's the only film that I've seen in one particular day. And I watch it once, and maybe I let it sink in a little bit, and maybe I'll return to it maybe that same day, or maybe the following day, or whatever. Time will pass, perhaps, or maybe I'll let it sit for a week or a month, and then I will return to it, something like that. But in that calculus, I will usually spend the day just having watched one film, and then that's it. And it really helps me because it makes it much easier for me to cement in my own head the particular details of a film, the acting quality of this particular scene, or the lighting of that particular scene, a narrative detail here, or a plot twist there, that sort of thing. It's very easy for me to keep it clear in my head. Whereas if I watched more than one film in a day, assuming that I had the time to do so, I would still, I think, at the end of the day, feel a little bit jumbled up in my head, because it would be difficult for me to keep things clear in my mind. Now, for those of you out there who are able to watch more than one film a day, and who have the stamina and the fortitude and the sort of the ability to be able to keep things clear in your mind and to recall things from this particular film and that particular film, even if you've seen it in close vicinity, within the same day or maybe within hours of each other, something like that. Once again, bravo to you. I think that is a trait that I would really love to have, but unfortunately I don't. So with respect to anyone who is able to do that, I am very, very jealous, and I wish I could have your capability. Unfortunately, I am not able to. But as I say, this is my own personal view, and this is the only thing that I know based on my own subjective experience. And it's the best way for me, anyway, to try to experience and to engage with a film. It's the best way for me to be able to recall a particular film, and it's the best way for me to be able, therefore, to get more involved in a particular work and to think about it sort of in my own terms or in my own particular time, as it were. So that is my long-winded way of saying that as of now, I don't watch more than one film in a day, usually. There are exceptions to every rule, of course, and once in a while I might watch more than one work in a particular day due to some kind of inspiration or something. But those incidents or those occurrences are very, very few and far between, especially now. So in general, I'll tend to stick to one particular film, and then I will then go to, and then I will probably spend the week maybe watching 3 or 4 films, as I say, within 1 week, depending on the particular week. That's where I was now. Again, I haven't always been like this, but that's where I have been. And I don't necessarily see it changing anytime soon. Perhaps if I could change anything, it might be trying to increase the number of films that I see per week, maybe by an extra one here or another one there, something like that. But as of now, that's the situation for me. But if I may, I'd like to now extend the same questions to you, my dear viewers and friends. What is your schedule like? Are you able, for example, to watch more than one film in a single day and be able to feel comfortable with your film watches. I mean, some people are able to do this. I mean, it's almost akin to having, let's say, a photographic memory. In my view, it's like, you have a cinematic memory, let's put it that way. And if you do, that's wonderful. And if you wouldn't mind, I'd love to hear about your own experiences with that. So once again, do you watch more than one film a day? Are you able to, do you feel like you're able to appreciate cinema on those terms? If so, well done, and I'd love to hear what it is you have to say further about that, if you don't mind. And then also, what is your schedule as far as watching films in a particular week? Are you like me? Is it like 3 or 4 films, or do you try to watch a film a day, maybe more? Do you think that your film habits or film watching habits are based on where you are in your particular film cinema journey? Maybe if you are I don't know, if you were like me, in my own personal experience, I tended to watch many films, and oftentimes a film a day, maybe even more, when I was younger and as a student. But now I am a little bit older, my pace is not so high as that. So I wonder what your own personal viewing habits are with that, and I'd love to hear what it is you have to say. Before I go, I should just make one point really clear. I don't necessarily think that it is necessary for one to watch a lot of films within a certain period of time. If you can, it's great, but if you do not, that is also great. There is nothing wrong with either approach. And for instance, some people, as I say, want to have the idea of exploring new things. And because cinema is so vast, one feels sometimes that one needs to watch as many films as possible within a certain time period in order to get as much exposure to as many films as possible. That is very, very admirable. I really admire that approach. And yet there are other viewpoints, such that it's the idea of sticking with a certain film, trying to watch it and absorb it on one's own terms, at one's own pace. And maybe that means, therefore, sacrificing having to, or being able to watch a lot of films in order to focus on something of a narrower scope, in order to perhaps try to achieve a certain level of depth when it comes to one's engagement to one particular work of cinema, that sort of thing. And I think that approach is also quite admirable. And perhaps now, where I find myself in my own life, I might gravitate towards the latter approach than the former approach. But again, that's just me and my own personal view. You might have a similar approach. You might have a completely different approach. Either way, my friends, I think it's wonderful. And I would love to hear more about your particular approach, if you don't mind. Again, in terms of the number of films you see and try to see, and if you are able to appreciate films on your own terms, if you watch them in close proximity to each other. I'd love to hear what it is you have to say. Okay, my friends, thank you very much for sticking around, and I really appreciate your time and your energy and commitment and your enthusiasm for this wonderful thing which we call cinema. So until we meet again, please be happy and healthy and well, and please keep on watching a lot of great movies. So until we meet again, my friends, thank you and cheers.